Skowhegan was a really successful industrial community for a number of years in the 60s and 70s. And the paper industry in particular, and they used to roll logs down the river, and the last log was, I think, 1976. And
I saw pictures.
yeah, no, it's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. The history is just amazing, and just the history of the river and everything. And I mean, the reason Skowhegan has its name is Skowhegan means a place to watch. And it's, you know, people have used that phrase liberally, you know, for marketing purposes, but it was originally because of the way the river bends, and it was a lookout spot for the Indians, and literally that's why it means that. And the river's been such a big part of our community, and when the logs stopped running down, businesses started to dry up, and some businesses moved, and some businesses didn't survive, and there were some lean years, and the not supporting that statue and restoring that statue during those lean years is kind of a symbol of how the community was. I mean, the community was kind of drying up and crumbling a little bit, and so was the symbol of our town. And in the last 5 or 6 years, there's been so much positive progress with things happening in our area, and you know, particularly the downtown and the Main Street Skowhegan. Once we got designated Main Street community, we started to see new facades and new light poles and a new energy in the downtown. Then businesses started to, you know,
what do you think was the trigger of this?
Part of the, I mean, I think the first domino was probably the Main Street group. I think that was the first thing that really kind of set these other things in motion. Because then the jail ended up, that's the old county jail here, and that's become the grist mill, but you know, no one had thought about investing in the downtown, investing in that at all. Never took a look at it, and you know, her and you know, Mr. Schultz, their partner, I mean, they came together and came up with this idea. But if the downtown wasn't as thriving as it was, they wouldn't have even begun to, you know, kind of look at those things. And the Runner River project was a project started even before that. Maybe that was the first domino. And the Runner River project is this project where we're building a whitewater park in Skowhegan. And for those who don't know what a whitewater park is, it's basically people put things in the river to make the flow of the river do certain things, so kayakers and paddlers can come play and practice in the waves. Essentially, the story that I know from that is somebody went somewhere on vacation, saw Whitewater Park, and said, "Boy, that looks like the river and how it bends like below the dam in Skowhegan. I wonder if they could do a Whitewater Park in Skowhegan." And so someone raised some money, and a study got done, and it turns out that our river is extremely susceptible, just the way the water flows and how everything goes. And so there's only like a couple of impediments that need to be put into the river, and we will be the southernmost point in the state for whitewater rafting, which is huge because we can get day trippers coming back. And it's like all of our revitalization, our rebirth, like now we're going back to the river again, and it's rising up again. And the grist mill has, you know, really, the other thing of the grist mill was we have this natural organic culture of this coalition of farmers. We have one of the best farmers markets in the state, and it's been ranked and rated and all sorts of things. That's not just hooey, it really is one of the best ones. And because it feeds off of these farmers that really do believe in the land and still work the land up here and believe in working together. And you see, we got 2 or 3 natural food stores in town because a lot of people do live that lifestyle. It's not something that we decided to become. It's something that we already were, that we've highlighted. And the grist mill plays into that. And you, between that and you got the fairgrounds with the horse shows, and you know, Lakewood Theater, which had some lean years in the 70s and 80s, is now back and running vibrantly. And it's like there's so many wonderful things happening in this area. And this icon is crumbling, and now the icon's going to be rebuilt, and the symbol's going to get rebuilt, and it helps tell our story. It helps tell the story of rebirth and revitalization, and that's really cool.
That's really cool.
It was such a big deal. It was such a big part of our history back when it was first erected. And then I think in the neglect of the lean times that we talked about, some people didn't see the point for it. Skowhegan is a very interesting community in terms of their views, their values. I think part of the lean times and the loss of jobs has really made them fiscally conservative, or has made a certain segment of the town very fiscally conservative when it comes towards everything. Even our town meetings, it's been difficult for department heads to get funding for, hey, we need a new fire engine, and people will stand up and say, I saw the fire engine, it looks like it's working fine, and it's like, I don't know, if the chief says he needs another engine, maybe we want to do that. And so public art kind of falls under that too, where if they don't see the need for a fire engine, are often some of the same people that don't see the need for public art and for why would somebody have this, why would money need to be going to this, because what does it give us? But yeah, so there is a little bit of negativity towards the Indian, I think, in that sense. But on the flip side, it's been very interesting to see who's come in and bought the T-shirts so far, like, and the stories that they have of the Indian and how much it means to them. And you have this other segment of the population that does want to see this happen. The history of the Indian is the Indian was commissioned for in 1966. And they commissioned Bernard Langley for it, as I'm sure you know. The Indian was built at his home. There's a wonderful picture of this is a wonderful picture of the Indian actually beside his home in Shawmut. So that's kind of cool. Standing 62 feet tall, weighing 24,000 pounds, the Skowhegan Indian stands in the geographic center of Skowhegan, which I don't know if that's correct. This is the only thing I've ever heard that.
So geographic center?
That's what they say.
Like
The reason that the location was selected, because a lot of people have said, why isn't the Indian down by the river?
Yeah.
Apparently the story that Katie tells, which, again, it's a verbal history, so it's an oral history, so it's hard to, know who exactly is right. But according to her, it was selected because that's where the train used to come into town.
Yeah. Right.
And so that's so that's the story she used. This is saying it's because it's the geographic center of town. I'm not really sure. The land was given, the men that owned the land at the time gave the land. We actually own the Indian as a Skowhegan chamber. It used to be the main, not the main, the Skowhegan Hospitality and Tourism Association, which then folded into being part of the chamber. So we own it, and we've got all the paperwork for it. We actually own the image and the use of the image as well. It's really hard to monitor that sort of thing, but we do, for what it's worth. And we own 1 foot around the base of all the land. And the rest of the land is owned by, some of it's owned by Walter Height, who owns the dealership next door, and some of it, I believe, the optometrist office that's right there owns a piece of that land as well. So the plan is, when the renovation occurs, that we'll take down the trees. We have permission from we received permission 3 years ago. We expect to get permission again from them to tear down the trees. And the garden club, I think, is committed at that time to maintain the area as well. So we'll have hopefully a garden or something there.
Yeah. And how did you get to the decision not to move the Indian to the near the
There's been a couple of, there's been a lot of discussion about the Indian and moving the Indian. The big discussion was, some engineers came and took a look at it, and they said in order to do it, it would cost well more than it would to restore it. For the fact of, some people think it's a wooden piece that's been carved, and that of course is not it. It's a metal frame that wood hangs on. The minute you tilted it back, you'd have other pieces that fell off, and you'd be left with pretty much a frame if everything went horribly wrong. If it just went partially wrong, you'd still lose a lot of other pieces. That's part of it. Part of it is it's anchored into that concrete base, and that's going to be a lot to do. I mean, there's steel rods that go all the way down through that base. So just the difficulty of it. Chimbro, which is a major contractor out of Pittsfield area, is the only company really around that could do it. They looked at it, they're like, no, there's no chance we're doing that. Could we find someone to do it for, but I mean, we're talking over $100,000, I mean, north of that. Where at that point, might as well just commission another statue and do that for less. The other part of it, though, is for the arts community and for Bernard Langley. And the Indian happens to be not only his largest piece, but one of his most famous pieces. And it's one of the only pieces that has remained in the location that he placed it in. And he was here for the placement of it and did the placement of it and helped select that spot. And that's important to a lot of people in the arts community.
But was it already a parking lot?
Yeah, why that spot?
That's an excellent question. Katie's got some answers for that as well. Apparently, the Cumberland Farms building was another building, and that was going to become like a museum or something. So it made more logical sense, and there was like a mural or something that was painted on the back of it. Or so, this is all very gray, and I bet her articles, the catalog of her articles has those answers maybe a little bit better. And Katie tells it, but even when Katie tells it, it's a little bit disjointed. I mean, Katie's in her 70s and stuff, and she loves to talk, don't get me wrong, but not always do her stories go A, B, C, D. Sometimes they go A, J, B, K. So it's I haven't quite got the whole story, but yeah, it's yeah.
But so this strip of land is now is part of the city? It belongs to the city?
No, private owners. No, Walter Height next door, who owns the car dealership. And when Steve and I met, we thought we were close to getting some funding a few years back. That's why I said about 3 years ago, they had said, yeah, it's fine to do that. And Steve had talked to Walter about that. Walter was fine with cutting the trees. The trees are up right now more for protection than anything else. Because it makes it difficult to see the Indian, especially from 201. But if you didn't have the trees up, then all the crosswinds, the Indian would be getting the full brunt of those. So the trees are up right now, so that doesn't happen. Geocaching. Geocaching is something I don't know a ton about. But I know when we do have community festivals and stuff, it's something to do with longitude and latitude and plotting certain things and that sort of thing. What did she say about the geocache?
She just said there is like a physical box there. The idea is that people throughout the world or nearby come with their GPS and they need to find this spot, and then once they reach it, they find this box and they need to take something from the box and leave something, like stickers.
Yes, okay, yeah. It's like a scavenger hunt in a way. Yeah,
but it's worldwide. So what do you think will happen to that?
I don't know. I want to keep it. I want as many people coming here as possible. I would love to have it still be a geocaching spot. Actually, I didn't know that. I knew that there were geocaching things, because what they'll do is, when they have community events, they'll get out their little computers and then just like, they'll go bury one of those markers so people will go find it. So, that's interesting. I did not know that. The Indian has become the symbol of the town. Since it was dedicated, it was, as you know, given to the main Indians, the first people to use the land in peaceful ways. It became the mascot for the local high school. It was the symbol on the town charter, or not town charter, but the town logo. It was that symbol. It was kind of incorporated into everything. When Madison, the neighboring town, used to play Skowhegan in football, they would fire arrows like into the Indian at night, and then be like, we're gonna beat you, blah blah blah.
Oh really?
Oh yeah.
Fired arrows?
They fired arrows like at the Indian, yeah. So at one point, that's one of the stories, and
At
again,
this Indian?
at that Indian, there was arrows put into it, and it was supposedly by the Madison football team before the game against Skowhegan or whatever.
Oh,
I don't know if that's true, but I think there's a ton of stories that we're gonna hear, especially over the next year, as we're so close to the actual restoration happening. So restoration of the Indian is a bit of a sore subject, or was a sore subject for a number of years. And that is because back in, I'm going to say the mid-90s, there was a restoration. The story goes, they put the thermometer out, the fundraising thermometer, and we have to raise $25,000, and that's what it's going to cost to restore it. And Steve Dion, who's the other person that you really need to see on this, which I don't know if you've heard that.
Yes, you've heard that.
You've heard. Steve knows the exact story, but something fell through with that $25,000. Because the $25,000 that was the supposed fundraising goal was done by this person that was contracted to do it, and he won the bid. It was we got put for bidding, and he won the bid. And his bid was considerably less than a lot of other people's bids. Other people's bids were much higher. And I don't know what happened next, but the funds did end up getting raised. But either, I've heard several things. One story is that when they look back at the bid, that the $25,000 only included the wood and the labor, but didn't include the equipment. Others said that he thought he could do all the work in a boom truck, like a lift truck, and then realized that they would need staging and it was too big of a job and whatever. But as it turned out, it was going to cost more than what they thought it was. And that word never got... Later. No, I'm not. So something happened. So something happened where they said, hey, this money is going to, refurbish Indian, and then nothing happened. And so there was some bitterness from the townspeople who had given money saying, we give this money to the chamber, and the chamber just took this money from us. And it's like, no, the chamber didn't. It actually went into a separate savings account, and it's always been there. I think because of the egg on the face of the chamber, they didn't really put out, and I don't know why they didn't do some damage control and say, whoops, we messed up, and here's what it is. But they decided not to at that time. This was before I was here. This was in the late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere in there. And so it became kind of a bitterness thing for people that said, hey, I gave my $25 and nothing ever happened, and blah, 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 blah. And so we never really thought we would get support again from the local townspeople. So then we started to go and look for other sources. There were marketing campaigns that were considered. There was selling it to an auction house that got considered. There was a lot of things that got looked at, but not a lot of action happened. So I started in 2007 here in February, and 2 days after I got here, Steve Dion came in and he said, hey, I'm the new contract for the Indian, and I'd like to do this. And I said, oh, that's great, yeah, I'd love to help out. And I had no idea what the whole story was. And we've been pecking away a little bit at it, but I'm the only employee here, so I get stretched in a lot of directions, and fundraising for something that doesn't, generate revenue for us. At the time I got here, the organization was running at a deficit, and I really needed to focus on bringing money into the organization, and so I tried as much as I could to do this. And fortunately, within the last 6-8 months, we've got a committee together to really try it and look at how we can do these things. We still have the original $25,000, and we had, actually probably a year ago, a gentleman named Andy Versosa from Akuzuko, I want to say is the name of the art gallery, down in South Portland, Portland area. Actually, let me get it here. But anyway, he contacted us and said that he had a Bernard Langley fund, and he'd like to give us some money for the restoration and a big Langley supporter, and so of all of his projects. And so we said, of course, if you want to give money towards us, that would be great. And so we did get some money from there, so we got up to about $30,000. And then the town government we asked for money for town for our organization for funding, and annually for doing community events and doing some different things. At last year's town meeting, we asked for $10,000 for fireworks for one of our events, and 7 or 8 townspeople stood up and said, geez, I don't want to give you money for fireworks, but we would give you money for the Indian if you wanted. And I said, well, that's interesting. Like, we couldn't accept the money at that time because we had to go through a petition thing where we had to get 10% of the voters to sign this petition so that we could even be on the town meeting the way our former government works. And we really couldn't say, like, okay, well, give us $10,000, we'll put it towards the Indian. We couldn't just make that decision at the meeting because we garnered those signatures under this other premise. And so this year when it came time to get signatures, I beat the streets and sat at the polls, and we ended up getting enough signatures to get it on the town meeting this year. And so we went to town meeting this year. We had a private family foundation that said we will match whatever you guys raise, and they were actually willing to match up to $10,000. So I asked for $10,000, and we got the $10,000, and so now they've pledged to match $10,000. So now we're up to $50,000. Now the entire restoration is going to take about $65,000 to $70,000, and so. But with that and a few other funds come in. Anyway, the number sits right now. We have about $58,000 is where the number is. And I don't know if that includes the $5,000 that this family foundation is going to pledge against other matching stuff, or so it's either 53 or 58. But it's either 53 with a promise of 5,000 more once we find match, or it's 58 is what we have, and they've already given that match, knowing that we're going to come up with some other funds. But we're within $7,000 to $8,000, and so that gives us close enough to our goal that we are planning on doing it. So these are our Christmas ornaments for the Indian, and it says on it, and we can show those, but Skowhegan Indian, and it was dedicated on June 21st, 1969. So we've had other organizations stepping up. The American Legion is going to do, they do these luck of the draw raffle things, where they get 200 items and they they sell tickets for it. But they'll make $1,500, $2,000 with one of those. So we've got one of those planned for the spring. With this, we've got that going. And then every time we get a story out, we get people that are sending checks from random places around the globe. And I mean, there was a mother who came in whose son, I believe she said, was living in Mississippi, had seen the t-shirts online and was like, "Mom, go pick up 2 t-shirts."
So can you show the t-shirt again?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. You can, with help the committee, but it was my idea, they approved it. Of
Show the
rebuilding
backside?
history and Indian summer. So.
Great. Nice.
The reason it's 65,000 or between 65 and 70,000 for the restoration, the big problem is staging. It's on unlevel ground, as you know. It is a 69-foot Indian on top of a 20-foot concrete base. So you need staging that goes up 85, 90 feet. Depending on how tall the person working on it is. And unlike doing work on a building, where you can affix to the building, obviously you can't affix to the statue, so it's got to be freestanding staging. So the cost for the staging alone is around, because you need it for 6 to 8 weeks, which to take that out of somebody's inventory for that long is considerable. It's about $15,000 to $20,000. So next summer is our Indian summer, summer 2014, and Steve has blocked off the time in his schedule to work on it, because it's going to be about a 6 or 8 week restoration project. Steve's incredibly talented woodworker, and a lot of the projects he does are top dollar projects, but he knows the history, he knows everything. He's got all of the files and reports for the wood study, the paint studies, all the things that you need, and he's just got some fascinating stories about the sculpture and the structure and how it was built, and some of the techniques that Bernard Langley used, and certain things of how, one of the things that always sticks out to me is he says that Bernard Langley was such a not hoarder, I can't think of the word he used, but there are bolts and screws inside the Indian that are 1.5 foot longer than they need to be, because that's what was laying around, and so that's what he used to do it, and he would just mix and match parts and stuff. So yeah, everything's coming together for next year, so it's very exciting. And I'm hoping over the next year, now that we've already got the plans to do it, that we start hearing some of the stories of the Indian, what it's meant to people, and there is really, it was so nice to hear the townspeople support it so strongly at town meeting this year, and even the people that brought it up last year, that they still, they do care about it, and they do want to see something happen, because we thought that there was going to be a lot of negativism, and there wasn't. So we're doing it. So and it's going to give us a lot of a lot of tourism traffic from not just people coming to see it once it's done, but also, I think we're going to have people that come just to watch Steve work on it, because it's kind of
He's going to work on it there?
It's going to be, oh yeah, he's working on it.